Hi guys, this is Dale Arnold. This is for Chris and all the folks there at Taped Live Before a Studio Audience. You were asking me about the TV show Cheers, and I gotta be honest with you, those of us who live and worked in Boston, we never went there. That's where the tourists go. I had a friend who lived in the building above the Cheers bar. He never went there either. My colleague Glenn Ordway, who works with me at WEEI, appeared on Cheers once with Kevin McHale. It didn't really feel authentic to those of us who were from Boston. A lot of fun to watch. Good TV show, funny, but for the folks around Boston, it never felt really like the real deal. But I thank you guys very much for asking. I hope you enjoy the opportunity to connect here, and thanks for joining us here on Cameo. You guys take care, especially all the folks at Taped Live Before a Studio Audience. You guys take care now. Bye.
Evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Everybody Knows We're Lame, your favorite Cheers podcast around. And I have to start by addressing that I am now with not one, but two backstabbing cocksuckers. And if I may address for a moment, if you were at the Sacco show Sunday night, I think it was, Chris?
Yes, it was, yes.
Chris, of course, exposed a private message that apparently my response wasn't good enough. Was that might be good? Was that, I forget it, was that in response to you suggesting clips or something like that?
No, I said, like, should we have an intro? What should the intro be?
Yeah.
Which intern should run it? I had a number of questions there, and your response was might be good, which was not.
I gotta tell you, Chris. But I gotta tell you, I fully apologize. And what I should have said is that I'm so insecure about how many great ideas you have, like having an intro, having a producer. I never thought of those type of things, so I was really very nervous. And what I should have said is, Chris, amazing ideas. Thank you so much for thinking of them. I think it's very important. I think really, if the show sucks and no one wants to watch it, they'll say, at least they've got an intro. So I'm glad we thought of that, and I apologize for my lack of response.
This sarcasm is hurting our chemistry. I do not appreciate
You don't like it?
I do not.
No, we are better. We're better when we compliment each other instead of going at each other like that.
I agree. I agree.
So we can move past it now. And now it's all on the table. All right.
Right. So it's nice to have that expectation when I send you ideas in the future.
Yes.
You'll send me a pithy response, and nothing will get accomplished.
Exactly.
Which is great. Which is good. Which will be good for the show.
When we get to like season 4, I'll say, and we break up, they'll say, if you go back to the early episodes, you can tell they really don't like each other, and that's where it all started.
Episode 3, you can see the friction right there. Right. This wild partnership we have.
I gotta say, I think maybe I'm in such a mood. Because quite frankly, I think the episodes we're covering this week sucked.
Oof.
I don't know your thoughts. Not a fan.
I didn't hate them. I thought the episode 5 was weaker. Episode 6 I thought actually was okay. But yeah, you do seem in a mood. Are you angry?
No. I'm back on track. Now I'm good. Now we're talking Cheers and I'm all right.
Okay.
But I do have to say, episode 5, I agree with you. The lesser of the two, I thought it fucking stunk. I think.
There's some real problems with it.
So basically the only storyline going on, you had Diane do her little thing with the caricatures, but really the only storyline going on is that Coach's daughter's in town. She's engaged to a guy that Coach has not met yet. It seemed too early to jam in. Coach is this pretty one-dimensional character. He's a doofus, and that's kind of all he's supposed to be. And very quickly, we're only at episode 5 of the series, and all of a sudden they're trying to show you some sort of sentimental side. And I thought it was way too quick to try and beat us over the head with that.
I think it was the writers trying to figure out what they had. So Nicholas Colasanto, who plays Coach, he's actually third build on this show. So, I think they thought, they didn't know what they had in Cliff. Norm was still, they didn't really know what they had there either. And Carla, we had the episode, last week where we talked about Rhea Perlman's kind of episode.
Right.
So I think they were just trying to give Coach episodes, which they don't do very often in this series. And this episode is probably a good example of why.
Maybe this is why, but even, I don't have a problem with the storyline itself, but my whole thing was, should not be the basis of the entire episode. If you're going to say, hey, Coach's daughter's in town and she's married to a real dick, maybe also give Norm some business and maybe Sam's got in a bind with the ladies again. Have some other shit going on, because I don't think that storyline is carrying an entire episode. And they go ahead.
Okay. I was saying my issues with it too are just how they delivered on this storyline.
Yeah.
So the daughter is played by Alice Beasley, who was on Moon. Did you ever watch Moonlighting? Probably not. It was in the late 80s. It's kind of where Bruce Willis got to start. Sybil Shepherd was in it. It ran from like 85 to 89 on ABC. It was a mild hit. It was a really interesting show. But she kind of played a kind of a quirky kind of character. She was like the receptionist. And it was a very quirky show, and she fit really well there. But she's not someone I would call ugly, like a hideous person.
No, I mean, I guess maybe TV ugly for the 80s, I guess, because even if you go back and watch any old shows, the people they refer to as fat are not crazy fat. The people they refer to as ugly are not crazy ugly. It's even the monsters, the real gruesome people on TV were pretty much your average schlubs.
So what do you think, like, if they had, say, ran that Aquaboggen commercial for Cheers, yes. What do you think the reaction would have been in 1982?
That would have been horrifying. That would have been, people would be calling up the advertisers. They'd be protesting. It would be awful.
Right. Well, luckily that didn't happen.
But I'll tell you,
I also think Alice Beasley is quirky. And quirky wasn't really a thing in the 80s. It wasn't something people really appreciated as much as they do, say, in, the 2010s. And I'm not saying Alice Beasley's this gorgeous woman. She's not. But the whole premise hangs on her being ugly. It doesn't really fly for me.
Shine through. Although I do like the idea. Maybe it's just, I don't know if you saw this more in the 80s, maybe, but it's something you wouldn't really see now. I do like the idea that they basically just have, Coach be under this delusion that his wife is attractive and she's not, and that's what the daughter is struggling with as well. I feel like that's an interesting storyline, but there's not another character they could have given that story, really. No one's old enough to have kids that age, but it just doesn't work for Coach. The schmaltzy scenes, and even I think as we get deeper in the series, the times where Coach gets serious about, say, Sam's drinking or something. It's like, what? So he's a fucking doofus. He doesn't remember his name. He's naming glasses at the beginning of this episode. Yet in pivotal moments, he can all of a sudden step up and turn off that idiot act.
Yeah, it's a problem. Like I always say, it's like the Homer Simpson issue, which if you cherry pick different Homer Simpson things, he's barely functional. But but yet this guy still is able to drive and have a job at a nuclear power plant, so it doesn't really add up.
Yeah, the analogy I thought of while watching this was, it's like if there was an episode of The Office where Kevin Malone had a very sentimental and serious dealing with one of his children. It's like, well, where the fuck is this coming from? And it's only episode 5, so we don't even really know Coach yet.
The other thing, that Office example though, the episode where Michael Scott drives his car into the lake.
Right.
Like, that's like, no one would, that's where a lot of people feel like it might have like jumped a shark, or the Michael Scott character kind of lost its way, because if he's going to do that, then there's no way he's capable of like holding a job. The guy is, not functional. He should, he needs special medical care. The other issue I have with the episode is the fiance. You can't have the character have everything wrong with him. I think pick one thing. Maybe he's kind of a guy that cheats. Maybe he's a guy that's, really wants this, I don't know, maybe he's like a money hungry guy, or I don't know, find some flaw with him, but he can't have everything wrong with him.
He tries to mask it in some way, at least. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because my other issue with that character was, you take Diane, who immediately sniffs out that Sam's a dog. Last week we talked about the episode with Dave, the great Fred Dreyer. Diane immediately insults him. Now this week, this guy slips into town. No one knows who the fuck he is. Coach doesn't like him. And yet Diane's the one saying, hold on, gang. Maybe there's something more to this guy. Whereas Coach is the one saying, no, he's a real piece of shit. That doesn't make any sense either. It makes
no sense that Diane would stick up for this guy.
No.
Diane's whole character, she's super judgmental. That's her big flaw, is that she looks down on people. She's not going to stick up for someone who's kind of a chauvinistic asshole. That goes counter. This was written by a guy named Ken Eston, and Ken Eston's a good writer. He won an Emmy for Taxi, which I know you've watched and you like. Mm-hmm. I love Taxi.
Yep.
He ended up having 11 nominations in his career. He does write some more episodes of the show, but it is his first episode, or maybe when he's kind of feeling or getting an understanding of who these characters are, because how Diane is written in this episode, the characters, this shit with her sticking up. This is not who Diane Chambers is. It's a complete misstep.
Swing and a miss, Kenny. And even as far, it wasn't a very funny episode. Like, I thought the Coach at the beginning naming the glasses, I thought that was a real miss. Even fucking Norm's snappy intro, that was a swing and a miss. It there was nothing to this one. Not a lot of juice here.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 49. So I'm going to say it's below an average episode of television. Not quite the infamous 41 that I gave last week, but I think an average episode of TV is better than this. This is a 49.
Well, this will be controversial because I'm going even lower. 35, I give this.
Oh my God, that's
by far the worst I've seen. So.
Oh no!
Easily.
Oh wow! This is going to be our lowest episode then.
Put that on your message boards, folks. Start buzzing.
Wow, that's a shocking revelation.
Yes.
between Dale Arnold to start our show and this is quite a shocking episode. I think people are really going to be forward and excited about this.
That's right. Controversial. Sparks are flying, baby. When Pop's away, the mice are going to play. So episode 6 we get to.
Yeah. So
episode
5 was called Coach's Daughter. Episode 6 is called Any Friends of Diane, and that did premiere on November 4th, 1982. People were asking us to read the dates. So
is that right?
Yes. They want us to be like Mike Francesa.
All right. That's a little, I saw that tweet actually. Yes. That is a little better. I think we could just do that. And if we take calls at the end, I think people will really enjoy it. We could be the replacement for Francesa. But episode 6 was definitely a step up. But again, I was a little bored by it. The thing with Norman and his boss, it took way too long to get anywhere. The thing with Norman and his boss didn't go anywhere, and it wasn't funny or interesting. Was this the thing in the early 80s that you take your new supervisor that you don't know out for a drink, even though he doesn't drink? Why? Yeah. I didn't even understand why the scenario was happening.
Drinking was a lot. So I'm 40, so I started working in white collar industry in say the early 2000s, and a lot of the older guys would take you out to drink for beer lunches and stuff. Sure. And it was a little awkward. But by 2010, that really didn't happen anymore. So I imagine in the early 80s, drinking was we watched Mad Men, and you can see how drinking is a huge part of the work.
No, that I can see. But this seemed to be almost like a contentious one-on-one for some reason. Norm was very nervous and didn't want to drink too much. Right. It didn't make a lot of sense to me.
It was not a B story that I loved at all. No. It also didn't really go anywhere. I guess the guy just kind of gets drunk. That's not really an interesting ending to it.
Yeah, that's not particularly interesting.
And you can tell the writers were much more focused on Sam and Diane in this episode.
For sure. And the A story is that Diane's friend shows up into town, more or less, as far as her lines anyways, just a carbon copy of Diane. And she is DTF. She just wants some D, baby. So she goes to old Sammy, of course. And my problem is, again, so she's ready. She's going through emotional distress, and she just wants a romp in the hay.
Right.
So Sam's her guy, and yet for some reason, Sam's accounting of this meeting is that they went out for 2 hours, and she just read poetry.
Yeah,
so that I don't understand either.
I don't get it either. I think the writers kind of lost their courage, where they should have just had him fuck her. I mean,
right, of course.
That's who Sam is. That's what this woman wanted. That's the more realistic and the thing that both characters wanted. And then I think it would have been interesting to see how Diane kind of juggles that. Or maybe this girl wants more from the relationship after all, or maybe Sam doesn't want more, or maybe Sam likes her after all. There's a lot of different ways you could have gone with that. But I think they didn't want him to do that. I think they were maybe afraid he'd come off as kind of a chauvinistic cat or something. But I mean, that's kind of who he is.
Yeah. It seems like at the beginning of this series, they think, hey, Sam and Diane are meant for each other, and that's how we're going to play it. Sam is always pulling away from any other ladies that come into play. And I think eventually, finally, luckily, they lost that because it doesn't seem to work in this episode.
No, it doesn't. And I think the girl that plays Rebecca Proust, the actress's name is Julia Duffy. She was famous in the 80s for being on a show called Newhart, which was that's the Bob Newhart on the Vermont Inn, not the Bob Newhart in the psychiatrist office in the 70s. Right. She had 7 Emmy nominations. She was a big name in the 80s TV. And she's quite good. And she almost got the part of Diane Chambers. I guess she was in the running.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was pretty much the same character. So.
And I think she does a good job in this show. I think she's a good actress, and as almost like a Diane Chambers doppelganger is kind of fun to watch. But you're right. I think they lose the courage. But I do really enjoy how this episode wraps up. I just like seeing Sam and Diane together. It's just fun. And
I guess so. But I think like I said, I think it would have been better if Sam actually fucked her. That just would have been more interesting. You haven't seen. I mean, at that time, I don't know how often you've seen stuff like that, but it's not. It's more dangerous than saying like, "Oh, she read me poetry for 2 hours. I didn't do anything."
Yeah, and it doesn't make it. Just doesn't. That's where the episode does kind of lose a bit of steam. So the other thing with this one is the very end of this episode. I think it's really good physical comedy, and we do see this in Cheers a lot because Ted Danson's a pretty athletic guy, and he's very funny, and his timing's perfect. Where Diane punches him, and he ducks and misses because he's tying his shoe, which he tied on too tight, and they both kind of wrestle and end up on the couch, and it's actually pretty funny, I think, and it's really well choreographed.
Right. There's a lot of physical comedy that you would definitely not see now throughout Cheers. I think we'll probably get more into that in later episodes, but that's a constant. Although it is always there's a scenario. She happens to walk. Why would she have walked back in at that moment? That's a little unusual.
I guess she was trying to go get her purse. I think she picked up something. Maybe she got their purse behind. She was in such emotional distress. I'm okay with that. I mean, it is just we need to end the show. It is a funny kind of.
It wasn't as bad as some other things I'll let that one slide. The only other takeaway I had watching these two episodes was nothing in particular about the episodes, but more in general. I never really realized how insignificant Cliff was in season 1.
Yeah,
at least in the early episodes. In my mind, he was always a part of it, and I know that, like we talked about in episode 1, that he was kind of he was a guy that auditioned to be Norm, and then the Cliff character was added later. But they had no role for him, really. He was just a guy that spit out one-liners every so often.
He's not even in the cast, so he's not billed in the credits. Right. He's only in the back end of the credits, and he wasn't. So in other words, he wasn't. He's not part of the main cast, which affects things like residuals and a lot of other things. So it's like, they really were kind of finding a place for him. But episode 6 is where the first time you see Norm and Cliff sit in their regular spots. Yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask. Have you ever seen, I can't think of other examples where there's been, I think Cliff's appeared in every episode so far. So it's strange to have a guy, I've never seen essentially, a featured extra being part of the cast.
It happens a little bit, maybe more than you think. So it happened to Julia Duffy. So she, when she was in this episode, was also a bit player in Newhart, very much like Cliff. And then by episode 14, they added her to the cast. And like I said, she ended up getting all these Emmy nominations. And it all happens to Adriana in Sopranos.
That's true. She was originally just a hostess, right?
Yeah. And a hostess, and then, they loved her accent so much that they ended up, basically writing her in. It happens a bit. You have a really talented person, and you're like, how do I end up working with this person? I gotta find a way, and typically they're able to do so.
Yeah,
I have
Okay. I was gonna say, I think it also happens in The Office a little bit, where at the beginning of The Office, you see the other cast members like Creed don't really have a purpose, and then that kind of shapes by season 2, I would say.
Oh, totally. Yeah, you can see those bit players kind of rise to prominence. So this was written by Ken Levine and David Isaacs. They would later write for Frasier. So they, think about how, Frasier's like 13 years later. So these guys kind of hung around. In fact, they write, if you don't like this episode, you're in trouble, because they wrote the next 2. So both ones we're covering next week, they wrote.
All right.
And the other thing was, there's a joke here. I'm guessing you didn't get it because it's an older movie, but Carla and Sam are talking about Carla's kids. And Carla says, after seeing Ordinary People, she wants her son to take up sailing.
Yeah, I did not. That stuck out to me because I didn't get it.
Yeah,
I assumed I would find it funny if that one's. I thought I wish I'd seen that because I would find that funny probably.
It's a pretty dark joke. So Ordinary People is a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But the crux of it is the father is Donald Sutherland, the mother's Mary Tyler Moore, and they have 2 sons, but the oldest one dies in a sailing accident. So basically, she's saying that she wants her son.
And that's a great joke. I figured it was something like
fun.
that. That's pretty. I mean, and pretty ballsy for the early '80s. Basically saying I want my kid to die.
Oh yeah, it's really fucked up. Yeah, but yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's like it came out around this time. And Mary Tyler Moore is really good in it. Check out Ordinary People. It's a dark movie, but it's amazing. What do you give this one?
This one, I mean, definitely better than the other episode. I would say only slightly above average episode. So I'll give it a 51.
Oh, okay. I give it a 72. I like this one. Oh, wow. I like anything that has more Sam and Diane. I like. It was fun for me seeing Julia Duffy because I kind of grew up with her being on Newhart. And some of the other jokes, like the ordinary people, some of these 80s references that I'm a little bit older than you, it makes it pop a bit more. But I don't know. I enjoy. I also really like seeing Cliff and Norm. I thought Norm's intro was good. I just felt like they kind of had Norm and Cliff down pat for the first time.
Yeah. It definitely clicked a little more. I think after I watched them back to back, so I think maybe watching the first one put a sour taste in my mouth. I never recovered.
You didn't, because you were even grumpy coming into this episode.
That's right.
Yelling at poor me, and you're giving me the business.
That's what a coach serious storyline does to me. You guys can see how passionate I am about this.
Poor Alba. Jesus Christ.
Oh, she's in for a rough one tonight.
Yes, so boy.
All right, guys.
That's all I got on these episodes.
All right. So next week, but we will of course get to episodes 7 and 8 next week. We should try and incorporate some different stuff too, so things don't get too stale. But I should also mention: is it a definite a movie night perhaps?
So I was thinking a movie night. We've been talking, me, you, and Carano, and maybe having like a bad movie watch night.
Sure.
I was thinking about trying to get something on Netflix. And if you were available, trying to find like one of the worst movies on Netflix. Which if you guys have any shout outs, feel free to DM, or even tweet it. And we could kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000 it, and maybe like Monday nights. If that works, we could do that.
Works for me. At QW Chris and at Blind Mike _ let us know what movies we should watch. Netflix would probably be ideal, but I mean, we can't really do anything.
I guess so. I think we'll stick with Netflix. I think it just keeps it consistent and easy. So if you know of like a really shitty movie on Netflix, like really shitty, not a movie like a really bad movie, let us know, and we'll definitely consider it. And we'll probably we'll figure out what movie it's going to be, say by Saturday.
Beautiful. So we'll talk to you guys next week, and until then, thank you, Kirk, and sorry, we're closed.